Sting returns with his first album of new music in 5 years. Will it make up for his CYA album, My Songs, 2 years ago? My review of The Bridge by Sting is coming up next on Track by Track. Hey everybody, my name's Kyle and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in today, and if this is your first time here, please take a second to click subscribe so that you won't miss future reviews and more. Today we'll be giving a listen and a look at the new album from Sting. The deluxe edition is a Target stores exclusive here in America, featuring bonus tracks you won't find in any other stores. If you're a fan and you're thinking about picking up a copy, be sure to stick around for a special unboxing of the Target Deluxe Edition on CD. That's coming up right after the review, kind of like a post-credits scene in a Marvel movie, only with a lot less Samuel Jackson. The music of Sting holds a special place in my personal sort of coming-of-age musically history. Dream of the Blue Turtles was one of the first albums I bought with my own money as a teenager back in 1985. His double live album the following year exposed me to the sounds of jazz for the first time, and the dramatic reinventions of police songs on that record showed me how songs can evolve and even metamorphosize. I camped out for concert tickets for his Soul Cages tour in 1991, and since then he's become one of the acts I've seen the most times in concert. So generally speaking, I think it's safe to say I like Sting. But I'm far from a Sting stan. I had some pretty harsh things to say about his last studio album, 2019's My Songs. I found that to be a rather pointless exercise that was probably far more interesting to Sting himself than to his fans. And for an artist with a history of being musically adventurous, My Songs felt uncharacteristically like the man had run out of ideas. It's been 5 years since Sting has released a solo album of new rock music. 2016's 57th and 9th was a welcome, albeit somewhat uninspired, return to form following, at that point, a 13-year gap in his rock discography. Pragmatically, I was certainly coming into his 2021 effort, The Bridge, with lowered expectations. The first two singles here were actually the first two tracks on the album as well. Rushing Water is a solid pop rock track that definitely serves as a nice reintroduction of Sting in that radio-friendly mode that earned him his biggest solo hits in the 90s. Not destined to be one of my favorite songs in his catalog by any means, but it was a promising start. And although I cringe a bit at the lyric rhyming couch with ouch, I must admit it feels like trademark Sting, for better or worse. In fact, I wish he'd leaned even more strongly into trademark Sting on track 2. If It's Love is actually a really good song, but the instrumentation and production here feels very out of character for Sting in general, but especially for the rest of the album. Yes, the man is a musical chameleon, but here he seems to have veered into Michael Bublé territory, complete with schmaltzy horns and backing vocals. There's hints at where things could have gone, like the underlying guitar riff that feels lifted from 1990s All This Time. If he'd committed to that more pop rock approach, it would have resonated much better for me. Instead, it comes across like the soundtrack to a montage in a romantic comedy. Still, I have to give Sting props for the most catchy whistling in a pop song since Young Folks by Peter, Bjorn, and John. I have to say, honestly, if you skip track 2, the rest of this album collectively feels far more cohesive. The Book of Numbers on track 3 gets things back, well, on track. I really dig the chugging bass here that kind of takes the melodic lead. That's a choice that really helps this song stand out on the album. The brass accents on the chorus feel a little out of place, perhaps holdovers from If It's Love, but they're subtle enough not to drag things down. Then on Loving You, we get what may be the darkest song on the album, a mood in stark contrast to the track's title. Here, Sting takes on the persona of a man lamenting about the breakdown of his marriage and his wife's infidelity. Although that scenario may be painfully familiar to some listeners, I found it hard to sympathize with the protagonist's self-defeating attitudes. He's clearly more devoted to his wedding vows than his wedded wife, signaling his intent to suffer rather than, divorce her. And there's nothing here to imply he was ever a very good husband in the first place, so I don't know, maybe these two were made for each other. Now, I've commented a few times about Sting making a return to form on this album or his last one, but the return he makes on Harmony Road is truly the most dramatic. Here, Sting harkens back to his solo debut album, Dream of the Blue Turtles, complete with a sax solo from the great Branford Marsalis. For me, that moment on this song may very well be the highlight of the album. It feels so good to hear Marsalis and Sting reunited. Still, I have to say the very staccato rhythmic vocals on this track threaten to become a little tiresome by the end, which at 3 minutes and 18 seconds stops just short of crossing that line. As we move into the second half of the album, Sting starts to explore some of the familiar sounds and songwriting tropes of his mid-90s output, most notably on the song For Her Love. It's a dead ringer for Shape of My Heart, but it never quite manages to elevate to the same level. It simply doesn't have a strong enough melodic hook. Then on The Hills on the Border, we find Sting in his novelesque storytelling mode, which is hit or miss for me in his discography, not to mention on this album. I think it works pretty well on this song, and I really like the Irish folk flair and his layered vocals. This is becoming another of my favorite tracks on the album. The storytelling continues on Captain Bateman, but ultimately it feels much less compelling. There's some nice guitar textures from Dominic Miller here, but otherwise I'm not very drawn in by this song. Not until the very end, at least, when we start to hear some interesting instrumentations pop up. The song sounds like it's about to veer into Dave Matthews Band territory, when it just fades out. I'd like to have heard more of that earlier in the song. But stay tuned, because Cap may be back before too long. The penultimate song on the album proper is The Bells of St. Thomas, which sort of feels like the final chapter in a trilogy with the two songs that precede it. Again, lots of vivid storytelling and scene setting here. And I really like the rhythmic change-up to this waltz-style shuffle, a welcome change of pace. Still, it never seems to build to anything and kind of peters out at the end. Speaking of the end, though, I think perhaps Sting has saved the best for last. The Bridge is the title song and the closing track for the album, and I have to say, it's damn near perfect. The track finds him waxing philosophical, accompanied by only a delicate acoustic guitar melody. The coda clocks in at about 2.5 minutes, and it's the very essence of effective songcraft. We get shades of troubadours of the past, echoes of Dan Fogelberg or Jackson Browne. It's truly a beautiful and intimate way to end the album. The problem is, if you have the deluxe edition, that's not the end. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for bonus tracks. But immediately following The Bridge with the unabashedly similar Waters of Tyne actually diminishes an otherwise brilliant song. Waters of Tyne sounds so much like the previous track that you'll swear at first they were the same or that it was a reprise. And on its own, it would be a quaint moment. But Sting's predilection toward Old English poetry here clashes hard with the lyrical style of The Bridge immediately before it, making its inclusion here a tragic misstep. On the other hand, the true reprise we get next is more than welcome. Captain Bateman's Basement is an extended jam that builds on the musical themes from Captain Bateman a few tracks earlier. I'd call it an instrumental, but there are indeed vocals in the form of Sting scatting along with the band. It's actually a lot of fun, even if it doesn't quite pick up where that other track left off. I'd have liked to have heard more riffs from the rest of the band instead of 4 minutes of scat, but nevertheless, I was entertained. The last bonus track is an utterly expendable cover of Otis Redding's Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay. From the moment you hear beach and seagull sound effects at the opening of the song, you just know we're headed on a voyage to Cringeville. Wasting time, indeed. Still, I hate to judge an album too strongly based on its bonus tracks. To be fair, the official 10-song cycle of The Bridge works pretty well on its own. And if you'd relegated the song If It's Love to the bonus tracks and made Captain Bateman's Basement an official album cut at track 9, I think it would have been even stronger. Overall, though, I found the whole listening experience to be surprisingly refreshing following the stale exercise of My Songs 2 years earlier. And while Sting certainly doesn't break any truly new ground here, he does seem more grounded, playing in the familiar styles and tropes that worked so well for him in the past. And perhaps more than any Sting album before, this one feels like a thematic career retrospective with songs that could have been peppered across his entire solo discography. Some of it hits, some of it misses, but most of it satisfies. And in a way that for me, it hasn't in a pretty long time. So I'm giving The Bridge by Sting an X rating of 6 out of 10. It truly is a return to forms, plural. Okay, as promised now, we'll do a quick unboxing of The Bridge by Sting. As I mentioned, this is the Target Store's exclusive version, which includes 3 extra tracks, one of them actually pretty good. Here's a look at the unwrapped front cover, and the spine, and the back cover. Taking a look now inside the gatefold. Here's a look at the CD itself. And finally, here's the 20-page booklet featuring lyrics and album credits, an essay about the making of the album by Sting, and an open letter from Sting to Billy Joel, semi-apologetic about stealing the album's title from the Piano Man's 1986 album. I'll just flip through that for you now. So there you go, The Bridge by Sting. If you'd like to add a copy of this to your collection, be sure to look for links to both the Target Deluxe Edition and on Amazon in the description below. Once again, my name's Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, plus check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.